Rivka's First Thanksgiving. This is a story about a little girl named Rivka, and the author's note explains that she and her family are immigrants, and this is their first Thanksgiving. "That's a funny-looking kotchka," Mama said, peering over Rivka's shoulder at her colored pencil sketch. "It's not a duck, Mama," Rivka replied, returning to her drawing. "It's a turkey to celebrate Thanksgiving." "What's Thanksgiving?" Mama started to ask, but was interrupted when Rivka's grandmother rushed into the apartment with a jar of hot applesauce. She looked over Rivka's shoulder and said, "That's a funny-looking kotchka, Rivka. It's a turkey, Bubba. For school, we're learning about Thanksgiving." Baba looked at Mama for an explanation, but Mama shrugged her shoulders to show she didn't know either. "Thanksgiving? What is it?" asked Baba. "It's a big happy holiday to celebrate the friendship between the Indians and the Pilgrims. It's an important holiday, and I think we should celebrate it too." "But we don't know any Indians," Baba said. "Do we?" "It sounds to me as though this is a party for Gentiles," Mama added. "It's not for us." "You're wrong, Mama. It started with the Indians because they helped the Pilgrims build houses and plant crops. So, to thank the Indians for helping and to thank God for bringing them to this wonderful country, the Pilgrims made a celebration, a feast, and they called it Thanksgiving." Mama looked doubtful. "It's true, Mama. Miss Broderick said Thanksgiving is a national holiday for everybody." "But it can't be for us," Bubba said. "It's not for Jews, or we would know about it." "Thanksgiving is for all Americans, Bubba. Aren't we Americans too?" Bubba and Mama exchanged flustered looks. Then Bubba announced, "In the morning, I'll go to Rivington Street." This meant Bubba planned to consult with the Rabbi Yoshi Preminger. That night, when Papa came home, Mama asked if he'd ever heard of Thanksgiving. "It's a holiday," he said, "a family holiday with a lot of food." "Is it for Jews?" Mama asked. "I don't know," Papa admitted. "The teacher in my English class didn't say anything about religion. She told us the early Americans made a harvest festival and they called it Thanksgiving. That's what I remember." When Rivka came home from school the next day, Bubba was waiting for her. "Don't take off your coat," she said excitedly. "The Rabbi Yoshi Preminger wants to see you, to talk to you." Why? Rivka had never met the esteemed Rabbi Yoshi Preminger, and she was a little frightened at the idea. "Why? Because the Tzaddik asked for you to come, that's why." For Bubba, no further explanation was needed. As they walked up the steep, creaking flight of stairs to the rabbi's apartment on Rivington Street, Rivka smelled the rotting wood of the old tenement building. Bubba rapped on the door softly. Almost immediately, the Rebbetzin Preminger, wearing a black wavy shidel over her hair, welcomed them in. She smiled and put her index finger to her lips as she led them down the long hallway to Rabbi Yoshi Preminger's study. She knocked twice on the door. "Come," said a voice from inside. The room was dark and musty. Books lined all four walls and were stacked on the windowsill so that little light permeated the room. Behind the desk sat a very small, white-bearded man. Rivka thought he looked like a gnome on a throne, but the deep voice that came from the Rabbi Yoshi Preminger belied his size. "So," he boomed, "you are..." Let's try that again. "So," he boomed, "you are a Jewish child?" "Yes, Rabbi." "How old are you?" 9 years old, Rabbi." "You are a good student? You listen to your parents? You don't gossip or lie?" "She's a good child, Rabbi," Bubba assured him, "in every way." "Good. So tell me about this celebration, this Thanksgiving. Is this a celebration that would please the Almighty, blessed be He?" "It is a celebration to honor the Almighty, Rabbi, to give thanks for being here in America." "And you believe Jews have much for which to be thankful?" "Yes. Oh, yes, Rabbi. Here in America we do. In parts of Europe, terrible things happen to Jews every day, riots and pogroms. My father told me of the horrible things that are happening there right now. But here we are safe. I wish all Jews in Europe could come here, don't you, Rabbi?" The rabbi's voice softened. "Indeed," he said, nodding his head. "Indeed, you make an argument I will consider, but I shall have to learn more about your Thanksgiving before I render a comment. Meanwhile, go in good health." 2 days later, Baba told Rivka that the Rabbi Yoshi Peminger had decided Thanksgiving was not a celebration for Jews. For Mama and Baba, the last word had been given. No Thanksgiving. For several days, Rivka fretted. The rabbi's decision was wrong. She would have to tell him. She wrote a letter and walked to Rivington Street. Her heart was pounding as she slipped the letter under the rabbi's front door and dashed away. To the Rabbi Yoshi Peminger, "Sir, my Baba believes you are the wisest man in the whole world, but I cannot agree with her. You may have read 1,000 books, but you do not seem to understand that immigrants came to America to escape from the mean, wicked people who hurt them and their families. That is why the Pilgrims came, and that is why the Jewish people came later. The Pilgrims were thankful, and I think that we should be too." Signed by Rivka Rabin. The very next day, Baba told Rivka that the Rabbi Yoshi Peminger wanted to see her again. "Why?" Rivka asked anxiously. "Why? Because the Tzaddik said for you to come, that's why." Was the rabbi going to punish her? Rivka worried that her legs wouldn't carry her to Rivington Street and up the steep flight of stairs. By the time they arrived, she was breathless with fear. When the Rebbitzin opened the door, she whispered that Baba was to come into the kitchen for tea while Rivka met with the rabbi. Oh, what had she done? Why had she written that letter? What would the rabbi do to her? Rivka shook as she entered the rabbi's study. There sat 7 bearded men. The rabbi introduced each of them by name and title, but Rivka didn't hear. Then the rabbi announced, "This is the child for whom I convened this assembly." Addressing Rivka, he asked, "Will you please tell the learned rabbis what you told me?" "I'm sorry I wrote you that rude letter, Rabbi," Rivka squeaked. "It sometimes takes a little rudeness to accomplish what we attempt. Now, tell them, speak about this Thanksgiving." "Oh, yes, Thanksgiving. It's an American holiday." Then, still quivering, she looked directly at the men and said, "It's a celebration that all Americans can share. We are here in this wonderful country, and for that we should be thankful. I was lucky to be born here, but my mother and her parents came from Buchech. My Baba says you also came from Buchech, Rabbi, so you must know about the terrible pogroms there. They happen all the time for no reason. My mother was badly hurt in a pogrom when she was 12 years old. A Cossack on a horse struck her on the head because she was Jewish, for no other reason than that. No one thought she would live, but she did. She can't remember anything that happened to her before she was 12. Nothing. Not a single thing." The rabbis shook their heads sadly. "So here we are now, safe in America. God first brought the Pilgrims, and then he brought us, the Jews. The Pilgrims were the first to give thanks to him, but I believe we also owe him a thanksgiving. As much as anybody, we owe him thanks." One of the rabbis leaned forward and asked, "In what manner is this Thanksgiving?" "From what my teacher told me, it sounds something like a Seder. Rabbi, family and friends sit down together, offer a prayer of thanks, and then they eat together." 2 weeks later, Rivka served the food for the first Thanksgiving on Hester Street. Baba had roasted a turkey, her first. There were sweet potatoes, salads, coleslaw, green beans, challah, and mandelbrot, which was a specialty of Mama's. Rivka, who had gotten the recipe from her teacher, made cranberry sauce. The table was set with Mama's prettiest party dishes, and wine glasses that sparkled in the candlelight. The Rabbi Yoshi Penmiger sat at the head of the table, surrounded by Rivka's whole family, Mama, Papa, and baby Sora, Baba and Zaida, Tante Golda and Uncle Moishi, and Rivka's 3 cousins, Saul, Muddy, and Zizi. The rabbi said a prayer in Hebrew, which Rivka thought must be a long thank you, and everyone said, Amen. Then he looked at Rivka. It is also a great pleasure to give my heartfelt thanks to the Almighty, blessed be He, for the wisdom children give us. Rivka blushed happily. Papa carved the turkey, and Baba passed Rivka the very first slice. Beaming, Baba said, I'm also grateful to Him, blessed be He, for my smart granddaughter. Eat, Rivka, eat, and happy Thanksgiving. That's the story. And at the back we have a glossary, and I tried to pronounce them right, but I may have messed some of them up, but I did my best. And on the back we have another copy of the letter that she sent to the rabbi. And that was Rivka's first Thanksgiving. Wasn't that great? Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any of these good books.